What is going on, guys? We are live on YouTube. We are live on TikTok. How is it going? We're doing this live stream one night early this week because I will not be available tomorrow night. So I'm doing it one night early to make sure we get this Thursday night live stream in. It's going to be on a Wednesday. T-Money already in the TikTok live, man. How's it going? Should I start Pittman, Javonte Williams, Rondale Moore, Ayuk, or Jameson, Elite, Crowder in week 3? This is a tough one. Honestly, T-Money, I'd probably go personally with Rondale Moore or Javonte Williams here. I don't know if you can trust Jameson, Elite, Crowder in his first game back. And Brandon Ayuk, the bazooka, we just can't start him till we see him getting an actual role in his offense. Like, we just can't do it. How is it going, guys, in the YouTube chat? We're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. We are getting ready for Thursday night on a Wednesday night because I'm not going to be able to hop on the live stream tomorrow night. I wanted to make sure I hopped on the YouTube live ahead of time before this Thursday night game so I can hit on what I wanted to talk about for this Thursday night game. So how's it going, guys? CMC over. Yeah, honestly, Costello, Christian McCaffrey is going to have a huge, massive game in this Thursday night game. If there's one player that you can be confident in this Thursday night, it is Christian McCaffrey. What's up, Napoleon Records? How's it going, Jay Costello? Thoughts on DJ Moore? DJ Moore, he's done exactly what we wanted him to do in the beginning part of this season. I don't know how you can't be happy with DJ Moore so far. I got DJ Moore in a ton of my best ball leagues. I have him in a bunch of my season-long leagues. He's the 9th most catches in the NFL through the first 2 weeks of the season. He's 11th in targets, 19 targets for DJ Moore through the first 2 weeks. By the way, we have seen the Adam Gase effect, guys, in full force already this season. Sam Darnold is playing well. He's playing well. He's top 12 in completion percentage. He's top 12 in adjusted yards per attempt. He's pushing the ball downfield, and he's looking for DJ Moore. And Robbie Anderson's been efficient, but also a little underutilized so far this season. T-Money's asking in the TikTok chat, do we drop Trey Sermon? I can't get myself to drop Trey Sermon yet. I really can't. I can't. And part of the reason, this is a little bit of sunk cost fallacy on my end, because I did draft Trey Sermon in a few leagues in, I think it was the 6th or 7th round, pretty early for what we've seen out of Trey Sermon so far this season, because I thought the talent was there, and I thought the offensive efficiency was going to be there for the 49ers. And I still think those things are true. And then there's all these injuries for the 49ers. Trey Sermon dealing with a concussion, which he will come back from the concussion. He might miss this week, but it's not going to be a long-term issue for Trey Sermon, where a lot of these other injuries in the backfield are. So I'm not dropping Trey Sermon yet, although it's tough. I know it's tough because there's not a chance you're starting him this week. But I would hold on to Trey Sermon. Honestly, I think the upside is there. And guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, I got my top 10 fantasy wide receivers, top 10 fantasy running backs, top 10 fantasy tight ends, top 10 fantasy quarterbacks ready to go for this week. And you can see them on the YouTube live stream. The link is in the TikTok bio. And honestly, in the YouTube comments, guys, I'm interested to see what you guys think of this top 10. Obviously, I hold the right to change this top 10 before the Sunday morning live stream. But this is where I'm at right now, heading into week number 3. What about Ezekiel Elliott? Guys, I know. Oh, my God, A.J. Dillon. Someone's in the chat saying A.J. Dillon got 18 yards for the over 17.5. I know, in Sunday morning live stream. Let me see if I can find that photo really quick. I had the A.J. Dillon photo on the Sunday morning live stream literally the entire time, and man, did he sweat that one out. He ended up with exactly 18 yards. This was the prop. This was it. This ended up hitting, by the way, so I hope everyone cashed on this last week. A.J. Dillon over 17.5 rushing yards. He ends with 18. Against the Lions, and Aaron Jones has just like a colossal, massive day with, 4 touchdowns. And he had a pretty good day on the ground, too. Crazy. I'm pumped that he got over the 17.5, though. And they actually did end up changing it. They did. After the Sunday morning live stream, we all hammered this prop. You got to make sure you're tuning into the Sunday morning lives, because we all made some free money on the A.J. Dillon over 17.5 rushing yards. Though I did also have him in some spots over 33.5, so that didn't go as well. So I'll take some heat for that, I'm sure, this week, too. Who should I start at my flex? Elijah Mitchell? Oh, man. Or Odell, Mooney, KJ Osborne. Honestly, I think this question is between Odell Beckham Jr. and Darnell Mooney. We got to see if Elijah Mitchell is going to suit up. If Elijah Mitchell suits up, there's still a lot to be said about who's going to be playing for the 49ers backfield this week. I honestly think Trey Sermon might have a better chance to play than Elijah Mitchell. It feels like the early reporting seems like the reverse is true. And I'm not going to say confidently who's going to be out there because we've still got plenty of days of reports to come out. But I really don't feel confident about who's playing for the 49ers backfield this week. But if it's just Elijah Mitchell, then it's probably him in this situation. But if it's not, I would probably go Odell Beckham Jr. if he's out there. Jarvis Landry out this week and for the foreseeable future. Odell could see 10-plus targets this week. But I'm excited to see Darnell Mooney play this week as well. Guys, we're finally going to get to see Justin Fields unleashed. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see Justin Fields unleashed on my television screen. I certainly am not going to be betting against Justin Fields this week. Justin Fields was one of the most underrated prospects in this draft class. And he has 99th percentile speed, which is just money in fantasy football. I was just listening to the Late Round Quarterback podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, fantasy football related podcasts to listen to, JJ Zach Harrison from numberfire.com, one of my favorite fantasy football analysts. And he was just talking about you look at the top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy football right now, and Tom Brady, I think, is number 2. But he's barely ahead of Daniel Jones. He's barely ahead of Jalen Hurts. And it's just because the way quarterback scoring works, you want rushing quarterbacks. You need to go at Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a guy that I don't know if you saw Patriots.WalterPicks recent video about the Justin Jefferson rule. The Justin Jefferson rule, and I love this rule, you're not allowed to drop rookies in the first couple weeks of the season, even if they underperform. Like, don't drop Elijah Moore. Don't drop Justin Fields. Don't drop Trey Lance this early in the season because you don't know how fast they can turn it around. Last year, guys, Justin Fields did nothing in the first 2 weeks of the season, and so many people dropped him. Don't break the Justin Jefferson rule. Don't break the Justin Jefferson rule. You look at the top fantasy point scorers at the quarterback position. Tom Brady's 3rd, but he's barely ahead of Daniel Jones. He's like 10 points ahead of Daniel Jones and 10 points ahead of Jalen Hurts, who are also both top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy right now this season. And it's because of the rushing. You want guys that can run the ball at the quarterback position. You want quarterbacks that can run. You want running backs that can catch. It seems backwards, but it's really not. Even in standard leagues, guys, catches for running backs are more valuable than rushes. All right, Danny Dimes. Yeah, Danny Dimes, he really has been on fire. Alex Etter. Sorry, Sam, what's up, man? Would you say it's fair? What would you say is a fair value for Najee? Yeah, let me pull up my top 10 running backs for week 3. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, we're live on YouTube right now too. The link is in the TikTok bio, and you can see my top 10 running backs on the YouTube screen. I can't show it on TikTok. TikTok doesn't have this feature. So come to the YouTube live. If you're watching on the YouTube live, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. If you're watching on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. And I know, I just posted a video about Noah Fant. It's not Font, it's Fant. I got like 300 comments correcting me on Noah Fant over Noah Font. Noah Fant, I know you're listening, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't usually listen to games with the sound on, so I'm horrible with pronunciation. Absolutely terrible. So I'm sorry. But go look at my top 10 running backs for week 3. You're going to see none other than Najee Harris. He's going to make the list for the 2nd straight week. Najee Harris, guys, he's a top 10 running back in fantasy football. Make no mistakes about it. I have him ranked number 8 heading into week number 3. And you just look at the peripheral numbers for Najee Harris. He is number 1 in opportunity share. He's had 94% of the touches in the Steelers' backfield. He has averaging 12.5 fantasy points per game, which isn't great, but he has seen 8 targets and 26 carries. So I do like the volume that we're seeing with Najee Harris, and I think you should like the volume we're seeing with Najee Harris too. The big concern, obviously, heading into the season and still is the offensive line. Like the Steelers' offensive line is not good. That's why they shouldn't have drafted a running back in the first round. But that's what the case is for Najee Harris, and I expect him to continue to be like extremely involved. And all you want is volume. You almost lost me my game, Xavier saying in the TikTok chat. Guys, I'm going to be giving out a lot of advice this season. You got to understand. You got to make your own decisions in fantasy football. I actually believe this is the most fun part about fantasy football, that you get to make your own decisions. So I'm going to give you all the insights that I can possibly give you to help you make your own best decisions. But you got to make your own decisions, man. You got to make your own decisions. So don't put it on me. Don't put it on me. All right. Ryan Belair, please, bro. He was what? Ryan Tannehill, I'm assuming. Keegan Griffin, man. Notice me. How's it going, my man? Sit or start Gibson. Yeah, you got to start Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is definitely a trade target for me right now across all fantasy leagues. People are panicking about J.D. McKissic, and we knew J.D. McKissic was going to be involved. But encouraging for Antonio Gibson. He's number 9 in weighted opportunities through the first 2 games. He has the 9th most carries. He's involved, but he's actually getting targeted more than he was last season too. Antonio Gibson has 7 targets through the first 2 games. He's averaging 3.5 a game. That's more than he averaged last season. Last season, he averaged a little under 3 targets a game, and his target rate is higher than it was last season. He's getting targets on those first and second downs. He's just not playing much on third down. And the concerning part is J.D. McKissic stealing the goal line touches. Hopefully that doesn't continue. But even if it does, I mean, Antonio Gibson's, he's seeing the volume that we like, and he's also very talented. So I'm not that worried about Antonio Gibson, to be totally honest. The guys that I am worried about, and I wasn't worried about him after week 1, I am much more worried about him after week 2. It's Ezekiel Elliott, man. Zeke, and I'm going to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire too, but Ezekiel Elliott, you spent a top 5 pick to get Ezekiel Elliott, top 6 pick at least to get Ezekiel Elliott, and then really, week 1 was encouraging. He saw 83% of the snaps. He really saw most of the work on the ground, and he really barely came off the field for the Cowboys. But week 2, that declines all the way down to 73%. And he actually has a good game, 97 yards, 1 touchdown, 16 carries. But he's losing target volume to Tony Pollard. He's losing a lot of valuable touches. And just based on the eye test alone, and it's not just the eye test, it's also in the numbers, Tony Pollard's just outplaying him. He looks way more efficient. He has been way more efficient. So he's going to keep being involved. So it does lower Zeke's floor and ceiling a little bit moving forward. All that being said, Ezekiel Elliott, he still has top 5 touchdown upside in the league. So I wouldn't be selling low on Zeke. I also wouldn't be buying Zeke, though. I would be holding Zeke. That's honestly what I would be doing. Fields or Tannehill? Honestly, I'm going Justin Fields there. I want to start Justin Fields this week. I really do. 99th percentile speed. You want running quarterbacks in fantasy football. It's pronounced Pollard, and there's no way. There's no way it's pronounced Pollard. And I know that I'm really bad at pronunciation, but now you guys are just messing with me. All right, Sam, I'm trying to work the waivers. All right, let's work the waivers, Dean. It's a Wednesday night, man. We got to work the waivers. And I will talk about this Thursday night game, by the way, because this is in replacement of my Thursday night stream. But let's talk about the waivers really quick. Do I drop Jacoby Myers for KJ Osborne, Tyler Boyd, Ruggs, or Pittman? If there's one guy out of this group that I would drop Jacoby Myers for, it's Tyler Boyd. I definitely wouldn't drop him for Osborne or Ruggs or Pittman. All these dudes are available. Honestly, I like Jacoby Myers a lot, though. Jacoby Myers is locked in, guys, as the number 1 receiver for the Pats. He's pretty clearly the number 1 receiver. And people love to pretend like the Pats are this super unpredictable team because of Bill Belichick. And they actually haven't been through the first 2 games. Damian Harris seeing the lion's share of the carries, James White seeing the lion's share of the receiving role. And you go look at Jacoby Myers. He's been on the field for over 90% of the snaps for the Patriots through the first 2 weeks. He has at least 6 targets in both of the first 2 games. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet, and he really hasn't had a big day. He hasn't seen as many deep targets as he was seeing last season. He only has 3 through the first couple of games. But I like Jacoby Myers, man. I think Tyler Boyd is a really similar option to him. I would probably take Tyler Boyd over him, and I actually think Tyler Boyd's going to have a big week because slot receivers just always crush the Steelers. The Steelers funnel passes to the slot. It's by design. It's why we cashed Hunter Renfrow over 3.5 receptions with ease. I think he had 5 or 6 catches. I mean, it's very easy. So I would go with Tyler Boyd, I think, this week. But overall, I think Tyler Boyd and Jacoby Myers, super similar options for me moving forward. At the tight end position, I know I just posted a video about tight end. The tight end position, every year, it's really straightforward because there's so few good tight ends. You want Travis Kelce. You want Darren Waller. This is why all offseason I was saying it's okay to draft Travis Kelce in the first round, and it's fine to draft Darren Waller in the second round. I still think drafting Kyle Pitts in the 4th and 5th round is going to end up being okay for you too. I think Kyle Pitts is my favorite buy low tight end right now. Noah Fant is also a pretty good buy low tight end with the Jerry Jeudy injury. He's one of 5 tight ends with at least 5 targets. Sutton or Cooks, you can't be benching Sutton right now. With what Sutton just did last week, I mean, you look at the peripheral numbers for Cortland Sutton, and you have to get very excited. And I like Cooks too. But guys, Davis Mills, and we're gonna talk about this game coming up on Thursday night, tomorrow night, a little bit. But you got to be going with Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton is leading the league in air yards He has 313 air yards through the first 2 games. And most of those came in the second game of the season. Guys, he had 261 air yards in week 2 alone. That's more than most other receivers have in both weeks combined. He had 12 targets. And he put up numbers with all that volume. He produced 160 yards, 25 fantasy points. He scored a touchdown. You have to go with Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is a must-start player this week. Baker or Higbee? Is that what I just saw from Chargers at WalterPicks? Let me see this. Baker or Higbee? Is this a quarterback versus a tight end? Rams at WalterPicks. Sorry, it's Rams at WalterPicks. Baker over Higbee if you're starting if he's a quarterback over a tight end. 100% always. I guess it's a better hair. Oh man, that's much harder. Honestly, Higbee's got pretty good hair. Thoughts on Trey Lance? Yeah, Trey Lance is tough, Fred. You got to hold on to him. I really do think the Justin Jefferson rule applies to Trey Lance and Justin Fields, because the second that they're starting, they're going to be top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy. Like Justin Fields, do not be surprised if he's a consensus top 10 fantasy football quarterback heading into week 4. That's how good he might do. Though I am nervous that it seems like Matt Nagy is just so set on starting Andy Dalton, regardless of how good Justin Fields is. Like there could be a chance that Justin Fields lights up in his first start and he still is benched for Andy Dalton because Matt Nagy just wants to see the world burn. I really don't know what it is. Guys, if you're watching on TikTok right now, hit the follow button, but we're also live on YouTube. And the link is in our TikTok bio, and you can see my top 10 fantasy tight ends, quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers for the upcoming week on YouTube that you can't see on TikTok right now. So come check it out. I'll show you my wide receivers right now, but I will try to get to as many questions as I can. But before I do, I know a lot of you, some players that you can't be panicking about. There's a lot of players right now, you really do not want to be pressing the panic button this early in the season. And I think the most obvious one to me is Calvin Ridley. Don't panic about Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is still a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And despite how bad the Falcons are going to be this season, despite how bad their offensive line is, despite how much Matt Ryan is going to continue to decline, don't panic about Calvin Ridley. He's going to be totally fine. Seriously, he's run the second most routes in the NFL through the first 2 games. He has the 3rd highest air yard share. He's still 17th in total air yards through the first 2 games. He's going to have massive games, guys. He's going to have weeks where he's the number 1 overall wide receiver, and the volume's there. He's averaging 9 targets a game, which is top 16 in the NFL. So don't panic about Calvin Ridley. Certainly don't sell low on Calvin Ridley, and if you can, I would definitely go trade for Calvin Ridley. Another guy that you don't want to panic about, A.J. Brown. Guys, A.J. Brown is going to bounce back, and he's going to bounce back this week. I think it's going to happen this week for A.J. Brown. I don't think we're going to have to wait any longer for the A.J. Brown blow-up game. Another guy that the volume is there. He's seeing 8.5 targets a game, and that's not that much different than what he saw last season. That's actually more targets per game than he saw last season. He averaged 7.5 targets per game last season. This is A.J. Brown, and now he's averaging 8.5 targets a game, yet he costs way less in fantasy right now. He costs way less in fantasy. 8.5 targets a game. He's obviously disappointing. He's only averaged 11 fantasy points per game. That's going to change. It really is. It's going to change. I'm not going to be surprised when it changes. You shouldn't be either. He's top 15 in air yards, and it's A.J. Brown. Don't doubt A.J. Brown. Seriously, do not doubt A.J. Brown. This guy is an absolute beast, and he's also going to be a guy that has number 1 overall wide receiver weeks. So don't sell low on A.J. Brown. If anything, buy low on A.J. Brown. All right, we got to talk about one other guy before we get into this Thursday night game, and I'm sure there's a comment about him somewhere in here, and it's about, oh my God, Kittle thoughts. Yeah, we'll talk about Kittle and then one more guy, and then we will get into this Thursday night game. And guys, we're live on TikTok. We're live on YouTube right now as well. Hit the like button and the subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're watching live on TikTok, hit the like button, hit the follow button. And if you're watching live on YouTube, you can see my top 10 wide receivers coming across the board right now. Let me pull up my top 10 tight ends to answer this question, though, about George Kittle. And I got to be honest. I think you're fair to panic a little bit about George Kittle. And honestly, I think by Sunday, I'm going to have George Kittle ranked number 5 tight end heading into the week. Right now, I'm at number 3. But I haven't tinkered it that much with these rankings yet because it's only Wednesday. George Kittle has been very disappointing through the first couple games. He really has not popped off the page in any regard. He only has 9 targets through the first 2 games, 4.5 targets per game. Really not great. Last season, that number was as high as 8. So he's seeing almost half the amount of targets per game than he saw last season. That if that doesn't change, he's going to be in for a big, big disappointing season. the target rate, the target share is down. The air yards down. Everything's down for George Kittle. But we got to trust in the talent of George Kittle a little bit. And you also got to look at these games for the 49ers. And we got to trust that the 49ers are going to be in more negative game scripts based on these first two games. I wouldn't sell low on George Kittle. I think it's fair to panic, though. I honestly do. I'm panicking a little bit, Jay Costello, about George Kittle too. But you spent too early of a pick to trade low on George Kittle. Brian K71, man, thank you so much. Man, I do appreciate that. I would go with, you can't sell low on George Kittle, but I would also be panicking. I have him in one of my 6 high-stakes leagues because he fell to the 4th round in that league. And I really had zero intention of drafting George Kittle anywhere because I was worried about Trey Lance for George Kittle. Honestly, I was worried for the wrong reasons about George Kittle. I'll be very transparent about that. I was worried for the wrong reasons. Sometimes you get the right answers for the wrong reasons. This happens all the time with fantasy analysis. But George Kittle, man, I'm panicking as well. But I wouldn't sell low. I would not sell low on George Kittle. I wouldn't buy low either, though. Don't go buy George Kittle right now. There are only 5 tight ends I really want in fantasy football right now. I just made a video about this. It's really, really easy for me. It's Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, but they're probably going to cost too much. You probably can't go get those guys. After that, though, TJ Hawkinson, he's also probably going to cost too much right now. The other 2 that I think I want right now, it's Kyle Pitts, who again, he's at least 6 targets in every game so far. He's going to score touchdowns. I think Kyle Pitts is going to get his first touchdown this week, by the way. He's going up against a defense that has allowed a tight end touchdown in each of their first 2 games. And then it's Noah Fant. I think those are the only 2 tight ends that makes sense to go trade for right now. But after that, there's such a massive drop-off at tight end like there is every season. So don't pay anything for any other tight end, honestly. Mark Andrews is another guy I think you should be panicking about. Mark Andrews is really, he's just not seeing the volume that we need from Mark Andrews. We thought he was going to be the number 1 receiver for the Ravens. He has not been the number 1 receiver for the Ravens. He's been more like the 2/3 receiver for the Ravens. It's just like George Kittle. He's been the number 2 receiver for the 49ers. And Mark Andrews, I think he will – I honestly feel a little bit better than George Kittle. If you have George Kittle, maybe the one guy to go look for is those 5 tight ends I just mentioned and Mark Andrews. If you can get those guys for George Kittle and maybe a little bit more. Mark Andrews, he has seen 5 targets a game. Again, that's not great, and it is down from what he saw last season, but he is seeing the 5th highest target share among tight ends. The problem with Mark Andrews is just that the Ravens just run so much. They're insane at running. All right, one more guy I want to touch on. Let's see if I can find a comment about this guy because I feel like there's got to be a comment about this guy in the chat. Stack Darnold and more tomorrow. Yeah, I do like that. Sam, trade Swift for Saquon. Yes, Jake, 100%. Guys, Saquon Barkley is back. He's back. This is the week. This is the last week you can go get Saquon. I'm serious. Go get him. And he's an absolute lock this week. Saquon against the Falcons, he played 86% of the snaps, way more than I was expecting in week 2. Honestly, I'm surprised he did play that much on a short week. He played 86% of the snaps on a short week. He went from a Sunday to a Thursday. And now he's had an extended week to recover. And now he goes up against the Falcons, who really have stopped nobody on defense this whole season, unsurprisingly. Somehow they are just as bad, or if not worse, on defense than last season. But the last guy to talk about before we talk a little bit about this Thursday night game, and we're going to talk about this Thursday night game because this is technically Thursday night stream because I won't be able to stream tomorrow night, so I had to hop on the live a little bit early. But guys, thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button and the subscribe button. Seriously, I appreciate you spending this time with me. I think time is the most valuable thing in the world. So thank you for tuning in. I got to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though. I really do. And I don't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a single league. I have him in, if you've been following me for a long time, I'm in 6 different high-stakes fantasy leagues. I have significant money on the line. And last year, I didn't win a single one of my high-stakes leagues. And part of the reason was I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 4 out of the 6 of them. I've been watching this guy very closely every touch of his career. And I've already gone back and watched this Chiefs game because I had to go see just what was going wrong with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's getting the volume. He's had 13.5 carries per game, which is 15th most in the league. It's not great. It's not that much different, though, than what he saw a season ago. 13.9 carries per game last season, 13.5 carries per game this season. A lot of people are saying, well, he's losing work to Darrell Williams. Well, that's actually not really true. Yeah, Darrell Williams took a red zone carry away, a goal line carry away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But honestly, the most encouraging thing in the peripheral numbers for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he is seeing over 85% of the touches. Over 85% of the touches from the Chiefs' backfield is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And you got to understand, the Chiefs are the best offense in the NFL. You want pieces of this offense. They're going to continue to throw at a higher rate than the rest of the league, which isn't necessarily good for Clyde, who's only at half targets a game. Like that, if that is the number that really has to go up for him to hit his peak outcome. But you got to go buy low, honestly. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a glaring buy low. He has 0 touchdowns the first 2 games. I really think, especially with how that game ended, people have such a sour taste about Clyde right now, and he's not that bad. Worst case scenario for Clyde is he's a running back 2. In best case scenario, he's going to have some weeks where he scores multiple touchdowns because he's on the Chiefs, and all the Chiefs do is score touchdowns. And there's going to be some games for the Chiefs too, guys, that are way, way, way bigger blowouts than they've had through these first 2 games. You look at the first 2 games for the Chiefs, and they've had really difficult matchups. Honestly, you could argue they played 2 top 5 teams. They played the Browns in week 1, 4-point game. They played the Ravens. They lost by 1. Like, a lot of their games this season aren't going to be like that. And it might be like that again in week 3. They have another tough matchup against the Chargers. But they get a much softer schedule in the middle of the season. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a good buy low. And by the way, the Chargers haven't been very good against running backs this season. I think they're bottom 10 in fantasy points per game to running backs. So I think Clyde is a pretty obvious buy low. And some of the trades I've seen get passed for Clyde Edwards-Helaire are just astonishing. I was talking to one of our creators today, and he was saying that he gave up, I think it was like Laviska Shenault and Mike Davis for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, what an absolutely insane trade that you were able to pull off. I know Ben Slonaker, I see you in the chat. You gave up Christian McCaffrey, and I think what'd you get in return? It was Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then also like a very good wide receiver. I forget the receiver you got. And usually you almost auto-reject every trade for Christian McCaffrey, but if you're going to get Alvin Kamara, then another running back 2 with running back 1 upside, then another wide receiver 1. I mean, it's tough to turn that down. It really is. It might have been A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown was the other guy in that trade. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this game. I want to talk about this Thursday night game because I want to make sure we have on the stream some insights into the game. I obviously like the Panthers in this game. I mean, they're 7.5-point favorites. I like them against the spread. That's who I would take against the spread. By the way, through 2 weeks, I've now picked 32 games against the spread, and I've hit 17 of them. I'm 17 out of 32, 53%. Picking against the spread is just insanely difficult. I mean, this is exactly why I do not bet on games, spread or money line. It's just so hard to actually make money on them. That's why I stick to player props. But I've had fun picking the games on these streams, and I'll continue to do it. And I would take Panthers minus 7.5. And the big reason that I'm taking them, and I think a lot is really, there's two reasons. A lot of times I'll pick against the spread, like largely just because of one team. But for me, both teams come into play here. Davis Mills, guys, he's not good. I would be absolutely shocked if Davis Mills, who's going to start for quarterback Thursday night for the Houston Texans, I would be absolutely shocked if he's good in the NFL. I really do not think he's good. He has done very, very little ever. He was a 3rd-round pick. He really wasn't that great in college. He averaged a 37th percentile yards per attempt in college. He really average quarterback rating in college at Stanford. And he didn't really look good in the few attempts he threw in week 2 when he came in for Tyrod Taylor. 18 attempts. He had a pretty abysmal completion percentage, under 50% completion percentage. And then on top of that, the Texans have all sorts of injuries at the wide receiver position. Danny Amendola out, Nico Collins out. It's just going to be Brandon Cooks for Davis Mills. And then on top of all of that, you're up against the Panthers. And the Panthers defense has been the most improved defense so far this season. The Panthers have shut down good offense. The Panthers honestly look good. They look very good. You look at the Panthers' first 2 games, and they haven't played the best offenses, but they've allowed 21 points for the first 3 weeks. And the Saints were coming off a pretty good week 1 performance. Jameis Winston throws for under 150 yards. He had 111 yards and 2 interceptions against the Panthers. And I mean, I got to be nervous for famous Jameis. I think you got to put some blame on the Saints having literally, they were missing eight coaches for that game. They were literally having backup quarterbacks do the subbing for them on the sideline, which certainly didn't help. But I like the Panthers in this game. I think they're going to destroy the Texans. And I've said this every week and been a little bit wrong about the Texans so far. Honestly, the Texans have surprised me through the first 2 games. In week 1, they put up 37 points against the Jaguars. I was sleeping on how bad the Jaguars in that were going to be in that week 1 game, but 37 points still impressive. And then in week 2, I mean, they put up 21 points against a decent Browns defense. And they kept it a 10-point game. They covered the spread in both their first 2 games. I don't think they're covering the spread in this 3rd game, though. I think Davis Mills is going to collapse. And the running defense for the Panthers has also been super, super impressive. you look at the game against the Saints, and I mean, they could do nothing on the ground. Alvin Kamara had 5 rushing yards. He had 5 rushing yards in this game. They combined for less than 50 rushing yards as a team. And then you look at the week 1 against the Jets. I know the Jets don't have a fantastic run game either, but the Jets also under 50 rushing yards in week 1. They haven't had a team go over 50 rushing yards against them. I mean, so I'm going with the Panthers in this game. I really do think that the Panthers are going to destroy them. I like Sam Darnold, DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey in this game. It'll be interesting to see how big of a hit Brandon Cooks takes with Davis Mills. All right, I love to see these questions. We're getting questions about Cordarrelle Patterson already. Week 3, I mean, man, if you were watching me at all this offseason before the season, and I did 500 best ball drafts this offseason, I was doing way too many best ball drafts. And I was drafting in the last round Cordarrelle Patterson almost every single time. And man, I was feeling really good about that in week 2. And honestly, those best ball teams I have so far, I've drafted 500 best ball teams right now, and I don't want to jinx this. Now, I'm knocking on wood because I know it's early. 15% of those teams are winning. There's 12 teams in each of those leagues, so the expected win rate's 8%, and I'm almost doubling that right now. 15% right now are in the money and on to the next round. Right now, I have a legit shot at the $1 million prize, so I'm feeling good about it. And a big reason for that is Cordarrelle Patterson. All that being said, if Darrell Henderson plays week 3, and that's not a lock right now, but if he plays, I think you have to go Henderson over Cordarrelle Patterson. Hey, Sam, left. Hey, like any mid-low end running back 2s to trade CEH for, or do I hold on to him? Thanks for the like, man. I do appreciate that. I would hold on to him. This is not the time to sell Clyde. If anything, you got to wait for a big week from Clyde, and the big week will come. He's on the Chiefs. He's seeing 85% of the running back touches for the Chiefs. So just hold on to that number right there and just hold on to Clyde. I wouldn't sell low on Clyde. Patterson, Mike Davis, or James Robinson. Man, we're already in week 3, and we're already getting the Mike Davis or Cordarrelle Patterson questions. I mean, just astonishing. It honestly is astonishing. Anyone that drafted Mike Davis, you made a mistake. He was on my do not draft list. He really just had so many red flags. The thing about Mike Davis, though, is he's also still seeing volume. And I know Cordarrelle Patterson has had the better week in week 2, like by a decent amount. He ended up scoring the touchdown. Mike Davis somehow, though, is 6th in weighted opportunities. And a big reason for that, he's seeing targets. He's averaging 6.5 targets per game. He saw 7 targets in week 2, 6 targets in week 1. He's evolved in the passing game. That's a big part of the reason you drafted him. I think Mike Davis is still ahead of Cordarrelle Patterson. All right, thoughts on Najee Harris? I think Najee Harris is a top 10 running back moving forward in fantasy football. So I wouldn't sell low on Najee Harris. Do I sell high on Brandon Cooks? Yeah, this is probably a pretty good time. Davis Mills is going to be the quarterback for a little while, and I do not think that's good news for Brandon Cooks, though he is the very clear wide receiver 1 in this team, and it's been huge for him the first 2 weeks. I just don't think the Houston Texans are going to be able to pass the ball at all with Davis Mills at quarterback. And if I'm wrong about that, then it probably isn't the best time to sell Brandon Cooks, but if I'm right, it probably is. Thoughts on Cooper Kupp? Cooper Kupp, guys, I mean, he has so far, Cooper Kupp, I don't think you could argue that Cooper Kupp's been the best fantasy pick so far this season. Cooper Kupp is the number 1 fantasy football wide receiver, right? Through the first, no, is it Tyler Lockett or is it Cooper Kupp? Let me pull this up. He is number 1. Yeah, he's number 1. 30 fantasy points per game for Cooper Kupp. He has 3 touchdowns. He has 150 yards after the catch, 16 catches, the most in the league, 3 touchdowns, the most in the league. He has the 3rd most receiving yards in the league. I mean, he really is just dominating. He's just dominating, and he is the go-to guy for Matthew Stafford. He really isn't running that deep route tree. He's running short, intermediate targets, and he's taking the ball, and he's just dominating after the catch, and it's worked so well. He is going to be a top 10 wide receiver in PPR leagues this season. Start Brady or Fields. This one's Brady. I mean, it's got to be Brady. I mean, you can't be benching Brady. Brady has 9 touchdowns through the first 2 weeks of the season. And this is the thing about Tom Brady. And I'm not saying this is like you should sell Tom Brady, but I do think it could be worth seeing what you can get for Tom Brady in a trade. Tom Brady has 9 touchdowns, by far the most in the league. The next highest is 7, Kyler Murray. But he's still only the 3rd best quarterback in fantasy because he has 0 rushing upside. 0, none. Absolutely 0 rushing upside for Tom Brady. So he needs this insane touchdown efficiency to get to the top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy. And I don't think he's going to end up finishing as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. I don't think he's going to average 4 touchdowns a game. And so Tom Brady is not going to be this good for this season. Like, there's just no way he can average this many touchdowns a game, even with the supporting cast he has. So I would be selling Tom Brady if there's something you can get in return. And again, Daniel Jones is only 10 points off of Tom Brady right now. Jalen Hurts is only 10 points off of Tom Brady right now. And the reason is rushing. Rushing is it's a broken scoring system for quarterbacks. You get way more points as a rushing quarterback than you do if you don't run the ball. That's why so many of the quarterbacks in the top 10, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, and we're going to see even more rushing quarterbacks join that list. So Teddy Bridgewater's climbing up the ladder in terms of being a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. Hurts or Herbert? Yeah, this one's tough for me, and I'll pull up my top 10 quarterbacks on the YouTube Live right now. I think this one was close last week, and I went with Herbert last week. And this week, if you look at my top 10 quarterbacks, and in the bottom of the live stream here, I do have Jalen Hurts ranked ahead of Justin Herbert. Jalen Hurts comes in as my number 7 quarterback this week. Again, the rushing upside really is a huge deal. Justin Herbert's been good, and he hasn't scored as many touchdowns as we want, but he has looked good. I think Herbert's going to be just fine, but I like Jalen Hurts just a little bit more heading into week 3. All right, should start Scary Terry this week. I didn't see who that second guy was, but yeah, one of the rules of fantasy is you're not allowed to bench Terry McLaurin. You don't bench Terry McLaurin, and I told you not to be scared of Scary Terry in week 2, and he ended up performing for us. I don't think you can be benching really Terry McLaurin any week. He had 14 targets last week with Heineke, so you got to love what you saw. He's had over 10 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks now. So I really like he's been targeted 18 times. He's caught 15 of those passes. He's one of the most reliable receivers in the league. I would not be benching Terry McLaurin. All right. T. Higgins or Marvin Jones. Don't bench Marvin Jones either. And I like T. Higgins a lot. But, man, Marvin Jones is dominating the air yards for Jacksonville. And he just has way too high of a ceiling to be benched right now, especially in this game against the Cardinals coming up in week 3. Guys, Marvin Jones is the 7th most air yards in the NFL. 7th most air yards. He has 20 targets. That's the 9th most through the first 2 weeks. He has 9+ targets in each of the first 2 games. Don't bench Marvin Jones. The volume is there. He's gone over 17 points back-to-back weeks. He's a must-start guy moving forward. I mean, Marvin Jones, I love him in DraftKings and FanDuel at his price this week too. If you're playing the showdown slate on Thursday night, I really think you got to go Sam Darnold in the MVP slot. I actually think Sam Darnold is going to be less owned than Christian McCaffrey in the showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel in week 3. And I think Sam Darnold has a higher ceiling than Christian McCaffrey in terms of fantasy points in week 3. And McCaffrey, by the way, I mean, he was just clearly the stone cold first overall pick in fantasy. He's gone over 20 fantasy points in over 90% of his games the last 3 years. No running back is even like remotely close to that. He's just so clearly the number 1 running back in fantasy football. And he's going to show it again in week 3 against the Texans. But I do like Sam Darnold. The Houston Texans secondary is really, really banged up. A running back to pick up this week. Yeah, you got to go get Cordell Patterson if you don't have him yet. I also think like one of the 49ers running backs is probably going to end up outperforming. Should I trade Diggs for Jonathan Taylor? I think it's a fair trade. I do think it's a fair trade. I think Stephon Diggs is going to bounce back in a huge way very soon as well. Both Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. The peripheral numbers are there for both those guys too. Stephon Diggs, guys, is also top 3 in the league in air yards. He's 5th in red zone targets, 3rd in air yards. He's 2nd in targets. Stephon Diggs is going to be so fine. He's totally fine. Don't panic about Stephon Diggs. And he actually hasn't done that bad. He's gone over 15 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. This is Stephon Diggs' floor. You've seen his floor. You haven't even come close to seeing his ceiling. If anything, Stephon Diggs is like a major buy low for me right now. But I do think like him for Jonathan Taylor is fair because running backs are just harder to come by. But I would prefer Stephon Diggs, to be honest. Thoughts on DJ Moore? I already talked a little bit about him, but he's balling out. And Rondale Moore, the other Moore. Rondale Moore, guys, I'm so excited that Rondale Moore is getting used in. I don't think Rondale Moore is going to end up finishing with more targets than DeAndre Hopkins, but he has more targets than DeAndre Hopkins for the first 2 weeks. I mean, it's absolutely insane. He hasn't played nearly the amount of snaps, but he's out-targeted him. When he's on the field, he's getting the ball. And this is why Rondale Moore was a recommended DraftKings and FanDuel favorite in the WalterPicks app on the iOS App Store in week 2. And he absolutely cashed for everyone that played him in week 2. I mean, absolute monster week. Obviously, he put up 24 fantasy points. He went over 100 receiving yards, so you got that bonus as well. And now he's 5+ targets in each of the first 2 games. His snap share is increasing. His targets are increasing game over game as well. He's a very exciting guy right now. And they're using him in the perfect perfect way, the exact way you need to use Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore is exactly how he was used at Purdue. He's just an insane athlete. So you get the ball in his hands near the line of scrimmage, and you just let him do his thing, man. You don't need to send him deep down the field. You look at Rondale Moore's average depth of target, and it really, it's just not deep at all. He's getting passes right at the line of scrimmage. His average target distance is 6.2. That's 75th in the league. He's getting one of the shortest amounts. He's getting the shortest distance of targets in the league. But he just balls out once the ball's in his hands. He's like just an insane freak athlete. And that's why he's 5th in the league in yards per route run right now. He's been a top 5 efficient wide receiver in the NFL. That's how good Rondale Moore is. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about Rondale Moore. Is it time to panic about James Robinson? I think you can panic a little bit about James Robinson, but I don't think you should sell low on James Robinson. We actually saw an exciting uptick for James Robinson in terms of his volume week 2, and this was a little bit expected. I talked about this on the Sunday morning live stream a little bit too. But Carlos Hyde, a lot of his work in week 1 came in garbage time, and that really wasn't the case in week 2. And he had a good game, guys, in week 2 in comparison to week 1. You look at his game week 1, he had 67% of the snaps and 6 targets, but only 5 carries. And then in week 2, he sees a lot more carries and a little fewer targets. But guys, the Jaguars are just so bad. This is why you should be panicking about James Robinson. And the fact that he's seeing less volume than last season, that's going to continue. Carlos Hyde is going to be involved. And even if Carlos Hyde somehow is phased out, there's probably going to be a different running back involved. This is just the Urban Meyer show in Jacksonville, and that's not a good thing. So I don't love James Robinson right now, but I think he does have better days ahead. I really do. So I wouldn't be selling low. Would you trade Lamb for Zeke? No, I would definitely not. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's just such a lock to finish as a top 12 wide receiver. I would not be trading CeeDee Lamb. Don't trade CeeDee Lamb for Zeke. Zeke, I'm honestly way more nervous about Zeke this week than I was last week. And I wasn't that nervous about him last week. I think he still has top 5 touchdown upside. But Pollard's going to be involved, guys. Jake saying, hey, Sam, what should I look to trade for CEH? One of our creators today told me that he was able to trade Laviska Shenault and Mike Davis for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, I think that's literally the ideal trade to do for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if you can do any trade like that, you're giving up your running back 2 or your running back 3 or along with your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver 3, and you're getting Clyde, just know what you're getting with Clyde. You're getting a running back 2 with running back 1 upside. That's exactly what Clyde is. That's why he was a 3rd-round pick this season, not a 1st-round pick. And he has a higher ceiling than people are realizing right now. Pollard, Patterson, or Shenault, I would probably go, honestly, Pollard is – those are all really similar options. I think Shenault's probably going to end up with the most touches, though, among those guys in week 3 against the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals are going to put up just serious points against the Jaguars, and Shenault's probably going to continue to be peppered with targets. Shenault's just such a frustrating player in fantasy right now because similar to Rondale Moore, they're trying to use him actually very similar to Rondale Moore. He's playing more than Rondale Moore, but the role he's playing when he gets the ball is so similar. He's getting the ball very close to the line of scrimmage. His average target distance is actually worse than Rondale Moore's. His average target distance is 4 yards down the field. He's really he's not running deep at all. He's basically playing like a running back role at the wide receiver position. So even though he's seen 16 targets, which is pretty solid through the first 2 weeks, there's just such little upside there. He's getting 0 volume down the field. So in a PPR league, he's definitely better. But we're going to see some bad games from Laviska Shenault. And really, his ceiling isn't that high. His ceiling really isn't that high. He has an okay floor because he is seeing 7+ targets a game. But his ceiling's really not that high because he's not going to score that many touchdowns not running deep down the field. All right. You're my guy, Sam. How's it going, Alex? What are your thoughts on Debo, sell high or hold? I know he's the clear-cut wide receiver 1, but Kyle doesn't care, obviously. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan, we know this for sure. We confirmed this after week 1, guys. Kyle Shanahan does not care about your fantasy football teams. Kyle Shanahan doesn't even know what tomorrow is going to bring. So how's he supposed to care about your fantasy football teams? But no, yeah, I wouldn't sell Debo Samuel, honestly. He's looked so good. He is just an insane yards after the catch monster, and they're going to continue to use him. He has the highest target share in the league right now. He's seen 40% of the 49ers targets. This is part of the problem for George Kittle, by the way. I mean, 40% of the targets are going to Debo Samuel. That's the highest rate in the NFL. He also has the highest rate of air yards in the NFL. Over 55% of the air yards for the 49ers are going Debo Samuel's way. Just insane. Just insane. And he leads the league in receiving yards right now. And he leads the league in yards after the catch. and he's third in fantasy points per. Don't sell low. Don't sell high. Don't sell. Just hold on to Deebo Samuel. Good job drafting the right receivers. Hold on to Deebo Samuel. Hold on to Cooper Kupp. Hold on to Tyler Lockett. I would not sell high on any of these guys. I wouldn't buy them either, obviously, at this price. But if you have them, I wouldn't sell high. I think there's plenty more to come like this for them. They're not going to do this that consistently, but they are going to do it throughout the season. Hey, at WalterPicks, how's it going, Liam? I traded Antonio Brown and Waddle for DJ Moore. Did I win this trade? Yeah, you did. You got the best player in the trade. It's really that simple. And obviously, Antonio Brown's looking like he's going to miss this week now. He had a pretty down week 2, and it looks like Antonio Brown. And I wasn't as excited about him coming out of week 1 as many people. I was obviously excited because we had Antonio Brown's prop in that week 1 game, and I was high on Antonio Brown going into the season, but he only saw, 5 targets in that first game? He really didn't see that many targets in week 1. Yeah, it was 7 targets. He had 5 catches in week 1. Like we were getting all excited about 7 targets, and then week 2 he comes out against the Falcons. He only ran 21 routes, and he had 3 targets. I mean, that type of volume is the definition of a boom-bust player. And then you're getting DJ Moore, who's going to get 7+ targets a game, and he really is going to be much more consistent. So, yeah, I like the trade for you, man. Should I trade Julio Jones for CEH? Yeah, honestly, I would do this. I would, Richard. And Julio Jones is probably the higher upside play for the rest of the season, but he plays a less important position for fantasy football, and you probably have decent wide receivers behind him. And if you do, yeah, I would do that. Julio Jones for Clyde Edwards-Helaire straight up, I would do this. Julio Jones, by the way, he did bounce back in week 2, which was good to see. I mean, he created 0 separation, none in week 1. And week 2, he definitely showed a lot more separation. I went back and watched that game already too. He had 8 targets, turned that into 128 yards. I mean, he's back. He's back. I don't think he's going to be super consistent. I think A.J. Brown's going to have plenty of big games where Julio Jones takes a backseat as well. And obviously, we're going to see just monster games like we saw to Derrick Henry in week 2 as well. So I think I would do that, honestly. I would definitely want Amari Cooper, though, Fran the Pan, over DJ Moore. I would want Amari Cooper over DJ Moore. Guys, we're live on TikTok. We're live on YouTube right now, too. And if you come to the YouTube live stream, the link is in the TikTok bio. You can see my top 10 quarterbacks, my top 10 running backs, my top 10 tight ends for the upcoming week. And I can't show that on TikTok. It doesn't have that feature. Worried about Tannehill. Yeah, I am worried about Tannehill. The really, like, the Titans just are not going to be the same offense that they were a season ago. Ryan Tannehill, they're not running the same amount of play action. They were top 3 in the league in play action percentage last season, and it was a huge part of their efficiency. And this season, they're already bottom 5 in the league. The drastic change after losing their offensive coordinator. And then on top of that, Ryan Tannehill's playing behind a much worse offensive line. So really, there's a lot of different factors at play that are lowering Ryan Tannehill's floor and ceiling. He really hasn't been as accurate this season. He's bottom 10 in the league in terms of his accuracy across all metrics: true completion percentage, play action completion percentage, red zone completion percentage, everything. He's bottom 10 in the league. So I'm pretty nervous about him. And he had 2 really good he had really good matchups to start the season. He did. He had the Cardinals without Malcolm Butler and really not a good secondary. And then he had the Seahawks, another really not great secondary. And he put up yards against the Seahawks, 347 yards. But he threw 0 touchdowns. He has 1 passing touchdown through the first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, that's really not what you wanted out of Ryan Tannehill. And if he's not going to have that ceiling, then why were we drafting Ryan Tannehill at all? Julio for Eckler trade. Yeah, it's 100%. Guys, Austin Eckler, he is a top 5 running back in fantasy football. Like, just very clearly. He is my number 7 running back, so maybe top 8 running back in fantasy football is a little bit safer to say. But he's my number 7 running back heading into week 3. And you just have to love the bounce back week in week 2. And the big concern, obviously the big storyline for the Chargers after week 1 was Austin Eckler, 0 targets. He had never had a game with 0 targets. And then week 2, 9 targets, 9 receptions, 115 total yards, and 22 fantasy points. This is exactly what Austin Eckler is going to do for us this season. He's going to be a PPR monster. He's just like a cheaper version of Alvin Kamara. All right, guys. I have like 10 minutes left in this live stream. I wanted to hop on this live a little early so I could talk a little bit about the Thursday night game because I won't be able to go live tomorrow night. What's a good trade target if I want to trade Brandon Cooks? Go see how much Clyde Edwards-Helaire costs. There's so many good trade targets right now. I just made a bunch of videos about this on TikTok. Wide receivers to target, running backs to target. I think the most obvious wide receivers to go target right now, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, both these guys are going to finish as top 10 wide receivers in fantasy. And they're not being valued as such by a lot of people right now. If people are panicking about them, go get those receivers. I also think Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, both these guys are going to be just fine. Both of them will also finish as top 10 wide receivers in fantasy. As for the running back position, I mean, there's so many good guys to go get, but Clyde is the cheapest right now, and honestly, his ceiling is high. I would take Clyde over Brandon Cooks all day long. Should I start Gibson or DJ Moore this week? This one's close for me. Oh, and I think I like DJ Moore a little bit more than Antonio Gibson, but I like both a lot. Antonio Gibson is top 10 in weighted opportunities per game so far. It's a metric I look at very closely. I think it measures volume really well, and it counts for the higher importance of targets than carries. But Gibson's seeing the carries. I mean, he's averaging over 15 carries a game, and I think he's going to be just fine. And honestly, Taylor Heineke did not lose a step for that Washington offense. If anything, the Washington offense might have looked better with him. So I would feel good about both these guys, but I like DJ Moore a little bit more if it is a PPR league. All right, this one's easy, man. Don't be benching Amari Cooper. I know Amari Cooper didn't have a good week, and really a disappointing week in what was supposed to be a big shootout game against the Chargers. Didn't turn into that, but Amari Cooper is going to be fine. I mean, Amari Cooper, he went under 10 fantasy points only 3 times last season, and he just did it in week 2. So great, we got that out of the way. He only has 2 more of those the rest of the season. I mean, obviously it's not that simple, but he's going to be fine. And he was dealing with an injury in this game too. He only saw 5 targets. He ran half the amount of routes though in week 2. He only ran 20 routes. He ran 47 in week 1. And he saw 16 targets. He only saw 5 targets from week 1. Week 2, he saw 5. Week 1, he saw 16. He's going to be fine. I wouldn't panic. Hopefully he gets fully healthy though. That's the only concern with Amari Cooper. Damian Harris or Clyde? Yeah, I mean, this week I would still go Clyde, I think, over Damian Harris. I think it's close though. I'm worried. The Saints have a good run defense. I think that Saints-Pats game is going to be super close. Cooks or Deontay? Yeah, Deontay, obviously, he picked up that knee injury at the end. But if he's playing, and I think he is going to play, it sounds like he's going to play, then I would go Deontay Johnson. But if you're not feeling great about his knee, and if he's at 100%, then it's probably Brandon Cooks. Though, again, I don't think Davis Mills is good. I don't think he's not good. I would be really surprised if he's good. And so he's not going to be good for Brandon Cooks. Hey, Sam, Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, or Herbert for week 3? I have to make a very similar decision here, Jose, in one of my leagues where I have Daniel Jones. I picked him up off the waiver wire, and Jalen Hurts. And I'll pull up my top 10 quarterbacks again, which I think will help you answer this question again. If you're watching live on TikTok, link is in the bio to the YouTube. We're live on YouTube where you can see my top 10 rankings for the upcoming week, which can answer a lot of the questions that I'm seeing. But I would go Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is the safest option here. And Daniel Jones didn't crack my top 10 this week, though. I won't be surprised if he finishes as a top 10 quarterback. I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback through the first 2 weeks. And, I mean, he's got an amazing matchup against Atlanta in week 3. So we shouldn't be surprised when he's a top 10 quarterback heading in after the first 3 weeks. He went 22 points against a pretty good Denver defense week 1, 0 interceptions, 267 yards and a touchdown. But he's doing work on the ground, too. This is the part about Daniel Jones you've got to love to see. He's running the ball with a vengeance right now. I mean, really, he's been one of the best rushing quarterbacks through the first 2 weeks. But Jalen Hurts has also been really good running the football through the first 2 weeks. So I think I would go Jalen Hurts. But again, you look at the numbers for Daniel Jones, and you got to love the running that we're seeing from Daniel Jones. It really has been very, very exciting to see. He's had the 3rd most rushing attempts per game, and he has the 3rd most rushing yards per game. He has more rushing yards per game than Kyler Murray. He's 2 rushing touchdowns too. No other quarterback is above 2 rushing touchdowns. But I think I would still go with Jalen Hurts. I still think Jalen Hurts is the safer play. And Jalen Hurts obviously has also been really good on the ground. Zeke or JT? Zeke for JT. Yeah, honestly, I think I would prefer Jonathan Taylor over Zeke right now. Though I am a little bit nervous about the Colts too. How does Carson Wentz sprain both of his ankles? That's honestly, and I hope he recovers. Like, injuries are the worst part of sports. But it's honestly impressive that you were able to sprain both ankles. I've never seen that. I've played sports my entire life. I've watched sports. I've never seen someone sprain both ankles at the same time. I don't know if it's the same time or just very close together, but just insane. I can't believe he did that. And I really hope he gets back soon. But it's not going to be good for Jonathan Taylor in the short term. A.J. Brown or Noah Fant? Definitely A.J. Brown, 100%. I mean, I'd like Noah Fant, not Fant. But I would go A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's going to bounce back in such a massive way this week. He's a must start everywhere. We're probably going to be all over his prop in week 3. I mean, I don't think his prop has come out yet. But if it's anything below 80, I mean, we're going to be smashing the A.J. Brown prop. A.J. Brown's going to go over 80 yards this week. And I don't think the prop's out yet. Let me see if that's changed since I last checked. But I do really like A.J. Brown in week 3. A.J. Brown is still a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He's seeing the targets. He's actually seeing more targets per game this season so far than he did last season. Dalvin for Lockett and Gibson. Walter says yes, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a really close one, man. And I understand feeling a little bit iffy about that, but you got to understand how good Lockett's been, man. And Lockett's going to have that ceiling all season. So I would do it. I would. I think Gibson's obviously worse than Dalvin, but Lockett's good, man. Lockett's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy this season. Antonio Gibson, Jamar Chase. Yeah, I would go Antonio Gibson over Jamar Chase all day long. Mike Davis or Tyson Williams. We got some heat in our Instagram DMs from someone about Tyson Williams. And I understand Tyson Williams has a good matchup. He has a good matchup in week 3. I get that. And I also understand that the Ravens just run the ball way more than every team in the NFL. The Lions have given up the second most fantasy points per game to running backs. I would go Tyson Williams over Mike Davis. But I caution you about Tyson Williams. He had 9 carries in week 1. He only had 13 carries in week 2. And he's been really efficient with those carries. But banking on running efficiency is pretty dangerous. You want to bank on volume, not efficiency. And with Tyson Williams, you're banking on efficiency. He has 1 touchdown, and he has 22 carries for the first 2 weeks, 11 carries a game. If he sees 11 carries against the Lions, he could very, very easily finish with below 5 fantasy points. Like, it's well within his range of outcomes. He's not catching very many passes, and he has very limited touchdown upside because Lamar Jackson and the other 3 running backs there will all be involved too. So if he doesn't score a touchdown and he doesn't catch passes, then you're really banking on the efficiency. And he's against the Lions, so the efficiency will probably be there again. I'm just cautioning you to know what you're betting on with Tyson Williams. And I think this is another great week to go trade away Tyson Williams. See what you can go get for Tyson Williams. Honestly, I think if you have Mike Davis and Tyson Williams, I'd go try to package both those guys for somebody. And I think you can sell someone on the fact that Tyson Williams is up against the Lions this week. Hey, Sam, go Ithaca Bombers. That's what I'm talking about, Gabriel. Who do I start at flex? James Robinson, Corey Davis, Cole Beasley, or Cordero Patterson? Oh, man, Corey Davis. What a abysmal showing for the Jets and Corey Davis in week 2. I think I would still probably go with Corey Davis out of all of these guys in week 3. I think Corey Davis is still the clear number 1 receiver for the Jets. I think he's going to be fine moving forward. And I feel like this was just one of the games where it was a rookie quarterback versus Bill Belichick, and we really shouldn't put too much stock into it for the Jets. So I'd go Corey Davis. But I think this is close. I think all these guys are really close in my rankings heading into week 3. But personally, I'd go Corey Davis. I think, honestly, the safest guy here, though, is James Robinson. I mean, James Robinson's going to see the ball at least 15 times. So I think he's the safest. I think the highest ceiling, though, is Corey Davis. I think Cordell Patterson, he might be a pretty big trap, guys. He could be a really big trap in week 3. I don't feel very confident about Cordell Patterson. Nobody's rooting more for Cordell Patterson than me. Again, I drafted him in 33% of my 500 best ball leagues. So I'm rooting for Cordell Patterson big time. But I don't think he's going to be this like consistent producer in fantasy. But I'm certainly rooting for him. Hey, Sam, should I trade Saquon for A.J. Brown? Man, this is 2 guys, Jake, that I really want. And honestly, no, I don't think you should. I think you should hold on to Saquon. If you really need a receiver, I don't hate it. Again, I think both are going to finish top 10 in their position. I think this is the last week, though, to go get Saquon. And if you are going to trade away Saquon, you probably should wait 1 more week. He's up against the Falcons this week. This is not the time to trade Saquon Barkley away. It really isn't. This is probably the worst possible time if you have Saquon to trade him away. If you have Saquon, what are you doing trading him away? You knew that he was going to be brought along slowly season, but he's going to be getting his full workload likely in week 3. He played 86% of the snaps in a short week of week 2. Now he's a long week of recovery, and he gets the Falcons. So he's probably going to have a 20-plus point fantasy day. I mean, I'm expecting him to go over 20 fantasy points this week. So it's probably best to save the Saquon trade till next week if you're that worried about it. And I think there's valid concern still with Saquon. The offensive line is still absolute trash. But I would probably wait to trade away Saquon, and I think this is the last week to go trade for Saquon before he's going to cost what a first-round pick usually costs to go get in trades. So, yeah, like a trade like this, for example, Julio Jones and Elijah Mitchell for Saquon and Javonte, I would do this trade, Cody, even if Javonte Williams wasn't in the trade. I think you're getting by far the highest upside player. And again, I talk about this all the time, but remember what the goal is in fantasy football. The goal is to win your league. It's to win the championship. And Saquon Barkley is the type of player that gives you league-winning upside. And you need guys like Saquon to win championships. I'm not saying he definitely will, but guys like Saquon that have the receiving ceiling and the touchdown ceiling and the volume and the athleticism as running backs, there's very few of them that have all those things. And Saquon's one of them. So yeah, I would go Saquon Barkley for sure in this trade, Cody. I think this is a smash trade. And he certainly has risk. Again, I think the Giants' offensive line's not good. I think I still have concerns about the Giants. But I do still think Saquon has massive league-winning upside. Guys, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be wrapping up this stream, as always, on the YouTube live stream. The link is in our TikTok bio. So if you're watching live on TikTok right now and I didn't get to your question, come on over to the YouTube live stream. I'll be posting videos all week, guys. I won't be able to go live Thursday night this week, though. And I will be live Sunday morning. I'll be live Sunday morning. So I'll talk to you guys all then. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you're watching live on the TikTok stream, have a great night. If you're trying to get your final question answered, come to YouTube Live. The link is in the bio. Have a good night, everyone. All right, YouTube, we are going to wrap up this stream in just a few minutes. We're going to go rapid fire in some of the comments. But Jacob, man, thank you for being a premium subscriber in the WalterPicks app. Seriously, I appreciate you so much. This is the number one way you could possibly support me, is going and becoming a premium subscriber in the WalterPicks app. And the second best way to support me, by the way, if you're not going to spend the money on premium, which it's fine, I understand. There's a 7-day free trial, by the way, if you're on the edge. But is to toss a 5-star review in the App Store. That's another really, really easy way to support me. So I do appreciate that as well. All right, but get to this question: trading Gronk for Kittle, need a running back? Yeah, I mean, if you need a running back, I don't see how this trade helps you that much, Jacob. But I'm all in for trading Gronk right now. I really think Kittle will be better long term than Gronk. Gronk has seen the concern for Kittle, they've seen actually similar volume. That's concerning. But I think long term, I'd be pretty shocked if Gronk scores more points than Kittle rest of the way. Gronk has 4 touchdowns through 2 weeks. I mean, just insane. Just insane that we're seeing this peak Gronk. And certainly, I don't want to be betting against Gronk. He's played 80% of the snaps back-to-back weeks, but he only saw 5 targets last week. He had 4 catches. He just happened to score 2 of those as touchdowns. He's going to have weeks where he goes under 10 points. He's going to have lots of them. Probably the majority of his weeks are going to be under 10 fantasy points. So I think this is the perfect time to sell Gronk. It really is. So I don't hate the trade. And I think you get Kittle, you could probably parlay that into some other running back. I subscribed and hit the like button. Thanks, man. Should I start Sutton and Cooks at flex? I would go Sutton for sure over Cooks. Again, Sutton is leading the NFL in air yards. He had over 260 air yards last week. Just insane. You have to start Cortland Sutton. Hey, Sam, I sent you an email and the WalterPicks team. Hope to hear from you soon. Gabriel, I actually think I responded, man. I'm very responsive in the email, so thanks for checking in. Mixon for Saquon. Ooh, I like this question. I would probably go Saquon. I think Mixon's safer, Bailey, because Mixon, I mean, we've seen the consistent volume from Mixon already, but I won't shock me at all if it's very clear, Bailey, that a week from now, Saquon's more valuable than Joe Mixon. So I would probably go Saquon Barkley. Thoughts on Derek Carr? I mean, you got to be so impressed with what Derek Carr has done so far this season. Really, he has proved me wrong. The whole Raiders team, honestly, has proved me very wrong. I know Raiders.WalterPicks was trying to tell me. He was trying to tell me this offseason. I went live with Raiders.WalterPicks. Brian, our content creator for the Raiders on TikTok. If you're not following him yet, you got to go follow him on TikTok. But I went live with him, and he was trying to tell me, the Raiders, they might actually be good this season. And then week 1, he was telling me that they could upset this team. Week 2, they could win this week. And what do you know? They're 2-0. And, I mean, Derek Carr is a huge, huge part of that. I mean, he's the only player in the NFL with more than 700 passing yards. He has 817. He has over 100 more yards than the next quarterback through the first 2 weeks. He's been balling out, man, balling out. I mean, he hasn't produced as well in fantasy just because he hasn't have the rushing upside and touchdown upside of the other guys. He's still the 6th best fantasy quarterback. That's how little passing yards matter in fantasy football. But I mean, still top 6 fantasy football quarterback through the first 2 weeks. Pretty impressive from Derek Carr. I mean, I'm impressed, and I'm very interested to see if the Raiders can keep this going. I don't think they can, but I'm not going to keep betting against them. I picked against them in each of the first 2 weeks against the spread. And by the way, I'm 53% against the spread, and I'm taking the Panthers. By the way, Thursday night. That's the official take. DK for Kupp. No, for Cooper Kupp. Man, Jose, this is a tough one for me. It seems fair. I don't love the 1-for-1 trades, by the way, trading the same position. It feels like, Jose, it's like, how is this actually helping both teams? Do we both just agree to disagree about the value of these players? So I think the 1-to-1 trades for positions are always tough for me. to see why they're even happening. But if I had to choose one of these two guys for the rest of the season, I think I would still go DK Metcalf. And that's probably I won't be surprised if that ends up being a mistake. But I mean, DK Metcalf's got to figure it out. And he's still seeing targets. He's still seeing a lot of volume. DK Metcalf's going to have massive weeks. So is Cooper Kupp, but I would still go DK. I don't love it. I love these. I always love seeing these comments, please, because I always read these ones. I miss the question, but then I see the please, and then I what was the question? So I please what? I can't answer. I can't answer the question if it's just a big please. So AW Tonsity, let me know what the actual question was. I'll try to answer. Hey Sam, should I drop Corey Davis and then get Jacoby Myers? Yeah, honestly, I think I like Jacoby more than Corey Davis right now. Trade for Miles Sanders while value is down. Thanks a lot. Yeah, let's look at some of the peripheral numbers for Miles Sanders. He's been a really interesting guy through the first 2 weeks as well, because we talked about this on the Sunday morning stream a little bit too, but he's been good with Jalen Hurts. He's averaging 85 yards a game with Jalen Hurts through the first few games with him, and he saw another 13 carries, 2 targets in week 2. His snap share actually increased a little bit from week 1 to week 2, but he obviously had a down week in week 2. And he hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season. And that's definitely going to change as well. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty good time to go buy low on Miles Sanders. He's been pretty good. He's 17th in weighted opportunities per game. I think he's a top 20 running back. I mean, he's a pretty solid running back too, in my opinion. And I bet you can go get him for a low-end running back 2 value. So I don't think he's the worst guy to go get. He's going to have some big weeks. He's still good. Thoughts on the Hopkins injury? Let me look up this Hopkins injury. I don't think I was very concerned about any Hopkins injury. Let me take a quick look. He's ribs, not practicing Wednesday. Hopkins played through a myriad of minor injuries last year and was frequently held out of practice. So it's definitely not time to panic. I don't think it's time to panic. I mean, this is I think pretty frequent for DeAndre Hopkins sitting out of practice with minor injuries. So I'm not panicking about the DeAndre Hopkins injury. No, I want to start both these guys, George. You got to find get these guys both in your lineups, both Joe Mixon and DK, Debo or Chris Godwin. Oh man, with Antonio Brown being out in week 3, and Chris Godwin's a guy you really want to start, but you're just not allowed to bench Debo Samuel right now. You can't bench him while he's this hot. So I would still go Debo Samuel. But I like Chris Godwin a lot this week too. I think Najee Harris is a top 10 running back rest of the season. I do. I mean, and he's top 10 in volume. It's that simple for me when it comes to running backs. You look at Najee Harris, he's top 10 in volume, and the Steelers really have not had a positive game script yet for him. And when they get positive game scripts, it's going to be massive for Najee Harris. It's really similar for Joe Mixon too. I think both those guys are top 10 rest of the way. He's seen 95% of the touches for the Steelers backfield. Hey, Sam, should I start Hurts or Dak? Yeah, if we look at these quarterback rankings on the board right now, I think I have Dak 1 spot ahead of Jalen Hurts. Though one interesting note about Dak Prescott that actually has me a little bit concerned, he's really not throwing the ball deep at all this season. That shocked me when I went and looked at the stats, because it feels like in that first game they generated a lot of passing. But he's actually 17th in the league in deep attempts per game. So he's been middle of the pack in terms of throwing the ball deep. He's thrown the 5th most attempts, but the 17th most deep attempts. He's really not pushing the ball down the field. And I went back and watched the Cowboys games, and the film shows this too. I'm a little nervous that that's something to do with the injury. But all that being said, he still has the 6th most passing yards the first 2 games. He's gone over 230 yards back-to-back games. He threw 0 touchdowns against the Chargers, but I would still probably go Dak over Jalen Hurts. But it's close. I actually do think it's close. But I would go Dak, personally. I have him ranked 1 spot ahead for that reason. All right, guys, I got time for a few more questions. Then I will be wrapping up the stream. Thank you guys for tuning in, guys. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, you got to hit that. Guys, we passed 4,000 YouTube subscribers. By the way, that was super exciting. All right, Dynasty question. Love these Dynasty questions. I have Zeke, and I think I should trade high while I can. Yeah, I mean, I do think that the clock is ticking on Zeke in Dynasty League. Who should I trade for? Maybe an upcoming rookie star. Yeah, I mean, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, I think are 2 very good options. In a Dynasty League, I actually really like getting young receivers because their value is maintained for a longer period of time than the running backs. I like getting my running backs through the rookie drafts, and I like getting my receivers through trades. Like when you draft the rookie running backs, you keep them for 2 to 4 years, and then you trade them for young receivers because the young receivers maintain value for longer. Same thing with quarterbacks. And honestly, I don't think go see how much Kyle Pitts costs. Go see how much Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson costs too. I think those are all pretty good targets at the tight end position. We've seen, tight ends can age really well. Travis Kelce, I think he's over 30 years old now. He's still going very strong. And now we see Gronk literally coming out of retirement. Yet Travis Kelce's almost 32. Still clearly the top tight end in the league. So I think going to try to get the tight end might not be a bad option either. But this does seem like a good sell time for Zeke in Dynasty. All right, this is the last question I'm going to be able to get to, I think. What's going on with Ayuk? Yeah, so, Ayuk, at least he played. He played in week 2. He, barely played in week 1. He really, was not even a thing in week 1. He had 1 catch, though. You look at the game logs for Brandon Ayuk, he did see a little bit more volume, but he's ran under 16 routes in each of the first 2 games. He's, barely playing. So, some part of it seems to be this injury he had in the preseason. But part of it also is Kyle Shanahan's just not buying into the talent right now. And the talent is there. That's the frustrating part. You look at 2020, and as a rookie, he really was balling out as a rookie, averaging over 60 yards a game. And he was a beast after the catch, top 30 receiver after the catch as a rookie. And he was really just dominating in all aspects of the game, especially later in the season. He went over 70 yards in 6 out of his last 7 games as a rookie. And first 2 weeks, he's not even running 15 routes in the first 2. Just brutal. So you can't drop Ayuk, but you definitely can't start him either. Hey, Sam, should I trade away McCaffrey for Chubb and Diggs? Yeah, Chasen, you should. And I don't like trading away Christian McCaffrey, but you're getting a top 12 running back and a top 5 wide receiver. This seems like a pretty good value. You're getting this guy's first and second round pick, so I don't hate it. Adam Thielen and Damian Harris, and I received Jacobson. Yeah, this is 100%. I would do this one too. A.J. Brown is by far the best player in this trade, so I like it. I do. I think I would do this trade. I think it's fair too. I think Damian Harris is better than Josh Jacobs right now, but A.J. Brown's the best player in the deal. So especially if you don't need a running back, I don't dislike this trade at all. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Oh my God, don't start Pollard over Zeke. I think both is fine, Jacob, but don't start Pollard over Zeke. I don't think we're there yet. That we could easily outscore him any given week, he still can't do it. He's just not going to touch the ball as much. Guys, thanks for tuning in. This was the Thursday night live stream. I'm going to be back live Sunday morning, so I'll be able to answer all your Sunday morning fantasy football questions then. Thanks for tuning in. Seriously, I appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button if you haven't yet. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Good luck on Thursday night, and we'll talk soon.